Welcome to YUUR Voice, a New Jersey public policy program brought to you by the Unitarian Universalist Legislative Ministry of New Jersey. UULMNJ is dedicated to providing a voice for justice, equity, and compassion in public affairs. My name is Ted Fetter, and I chair the Immigration Task Force of the Legislative Ministry. Today, I'm hosting this program. The series of programs that the Legislative Ministry is doing covers New Jersey issues like mass incarceration, economic justice, and environmental sustainability. Today, we're going to talk about immigration, and especially policies and practices around youthful immigrants, working conditions, and community development among immigrants. I am very pleased to be with two representatives from the Morristown-based Wind of the Spirit. These two guests are Stuart Sydenstricker, a board member who originally came to the United States from Brazil and has been in the United States for quite a long time, and Ana Bonilla, an immigrant from Mexico, also undocumented when she came, who now has youthful status for deferred action and currently serves on the Wind of the Spirit board. I think, Stuart, you've been a board member in the past,
right?
And Ana is currently a board member. I'd like to start with some information about Wind of the Spirit. Ana, can you tell us about the organization, about its mission, and what its activities are?
Well, Wind of the Spirit was founded in the early 2000s. Its mission was basically revolved around immigration reform and immigrant rights and justice. We really work with different communities from youth, labor, faith, and Stuart, would you like to add anything?
Do you want to add anything to that, Stuart?
I think a particular element of Wind of the Spirit is that it was started, and basically the members of it either have been undocumented, or they are undocumented, or they're very close to the undocumented phenomena. And the organization is very grassroots, and we strongly believe that progressive changes can happen when the particular people involved with the problem own the process of transformation. So that's a very strong element of our organization.
And it's very strong about empowering the very people that we're trying to help, to let them decide how to get that help.
Right.
Great. Good. Ana, how did you come to the United States? You came from Mexico. How old were you? Who did you come with?
We're from a small farming community in Puebla, Mexico. Mm-hmm. And my immigration story began with my aunts, who at a young adult age, they decided to work outside of that rural area. They wanted to invest in themselves and really, kind of go out on their own. And they approached my grandfather, who is a very traditional man in Mexico, where he didn't really allow for his daughters to continue their education after elementary school. He believed that a woman's job was to tend to the husband, and so they approached them. They wanted to go work in Mexico City to earn a little money to invest in themselves. But he said no, the person that he wanted to send them with was actually here in New Jersey, a very close niece of his. He felt as though maybe he didn't have a grip on them. Maybe he can, the niece could kind of report back to my grandfather. So that started there. And then later on, I've always grew up with my paternal side of the family. So my mother married young. She had me and my younger brother, who's 2 years younger than me. And in 1997, my father passed away in a car accident,
Hmm.
which kind of prompted my mom to really consider and look at her situation of where she was as a widow with 2 children. So she really didn't see any opportunity around our rural community. So she was basically saw herself, the only opportunity that we had for myself and my younger brother was for her to come here to the U.S. We spent 2 years living just with my paternal grandparents, the grandfather that I mentioned before, which I didn't know that side of my grandfather until I came here, because when I was growing up with him, it was a whole different story. He always encouraged me to study and he gave me like a couple of career options, an engineer, a doctor, or a lawyer, and it was always like not even like a clerk, not even a nurse. It was always like, very admired.
A professional job.
Right. And so I saw a different man, and when I came here and just, Christmas or whenever our family gathered on Sunday after Mass, and to hear those stories, it was just like, who was this man? But that's how we came here to the U.S. after 2 years. After my mom worked here for a little while, she went back and basically stole us from my grandfather, who she knew he had a very strong character, and there was no other way that he would relinquish.
Okay.
So it happened.
What kind of jobs did your mother get when she came to the U.S.?
So when she came to the U.S. here, she moved around Central Jersey in New Brunswick, and she basically worked for factories, and she was working with this one company since she moved here for almost 13 years until 2012, close to the time where deferred action for childhood arrivals was going to be released, announced by the president. And around that time, she got a letter that said that because her paperwork there was a discrepancy with her paperwork, and she needed to get her Social Security checked down. And honestly, her situation wasn't one where she would be able to straighten it out. So she basically saw herself being forced to work at temp agencies, which are another area of the United States that's not a very good labor aspect of our country. And but that's basically what she's doing now. She's working at a temp agency, and she also has a part-time cleaning job.
And in your own situation, you went to school. Did you
Yes.
go to college? Tell us about your own education.
So I graduated from middle school and went to a high school that was geared towards health and science area. And after that, I went to Middlesex County College for 2 years. But after graduating in 2012, there was no in-state tuition here in the state of New Jersey. So I had to basically either just take what was going to be my next step, and it could have been gone 2 different ways. Where one, I could have stopped and worked for a while to pay for the $20,000 that Rutgers would have charged me for 1 year being a full-time student. The other option would have been to go back to my native country of Mexico, one where I haven't visited for more than 12 years. Obviously, I am so accustomed to living here. I love being in New Jersey and New Brunswick, and I really honestly could not see myself be living in Mexico again, so I didn't. So even with the education, it would be such a culture shock even if it wasn't hard enough to experience that as a 9-year-old child. I can't imagine going back as a young adult who already had, certain mannerisms or ideas of how democracy would work. It was just be difficult. So I decided to stay here, and around the same time, a year earlier, I started working with One of the Spirit a little bit. I would say that One of the Spirit was kind of like my lifeline, because at that same time, having the top student graduating with 3.9 GPA and, having to defer my education. Thank you. Having to defer my education was really hard for me. But thankfully, I met a lot of wonderful people that helped me go through that part of my life and be proactive about it, and learn about what social justice is and learn how to be my own advocate and how to organize around issues that are important for myself and
I
my
wanna
community.
ask you more about that, especially when we get to the in-state tuition.
Mhm.
I know you've been active in that. But first I want to ask Stuart. You came from Brazil. Tell us about your immigration, your migration to the United States and your own experience.
Well, it's not such a interesting story as Anna's. I came, my family left the country, left here to go to Brazil, and my grandfather went as a missionary
Oh,
in the 1920s. So I was born there, and I was Brazilian. My mother was born there, so that was the country I knew. After finishing college, not much responsibility at that time, I decided to travel around the world, and the United States was the first stop. So I came as a tourist, didn't have a clue of what immigration was all about, didn't know about undocumented, nothing. So very naive, and after 6 months or so traveling around the country and trying to do this and that, I started learning more about this, and then I became undocumented. It took me about...
your visa expired.
My visa expired, so which is one other way of being undocumented. Sure. The fact that I had a lot of privilege by the color of my skin, I knew how to a little bit of English enough already to get by. People would not associate me with immigrant, and definitely not from Brazil. But for 6 years, I was undocumented and doing different things to survive. Nothing compared to what people are going through, but it was a rough experience and an eye-opening. So then I decided.
What kind of jobs did you have?
Well, the first one was picking apple in Madison, Wisconsin. It's not. I don't recommend. Okay, it was about $12 to fill up a bin. There was maybe it took me about 4 hours or so, so it was about $3 an hour job. And then different things, and finally when my visa expired, and I had to find a way of get the green card, which was pink. I decided to find out what was available, and I found out that even though I was an engineer, being a housekeeper was the quickest way to the blessed paper. So it took me about 5 years through lawyers and whatnot to get that, but I became a citizen through work-related, being a housekeeper, taking care of 5 kids.
I see. Wow. Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I do want to know more about the in-state tuition. Last year, New Jersey joined a number of other states in giving undocumented college students in-state tuition. Anna, you were involved in that campaign. Tell us about it.
So the in-state tuition campaign really started around 2003, 2004. So it's been in the making for more than 10 years. But last year, there was something different about the campaign where it was actually the students who were advocating, who were organizing around this very important issue for New Jersey. We were involved with different groups throughout the states that were mainly targeted towards students or immigrant youth. Being Anak Bayan, which is a Filipino youth organization, one of the Spririt was involved as well, New Jersey United Students, the New Jersey Dream Act Coalition. And so we worked around this very important issue to us and also for many immigrant families, because a lot of times families would work 3 jobs, 2 jobs to see their child go to a community college or even pay the insanely amount of thousands of dollars per credit. We saw that this is a very important issue for New Jersey, especially being the 5th state with the highest undocumented population. So last year, we basically talked with a lot of legislators to see how we would be able to pass a legislature that would provide both in-state tuition and state financial aid for undocumented students. Because one of the things that a lot of people seem to forget is that the IRS does not discriminate, and that the IRS collects money, and that undocumented immigrants in New Jersey pay close to $500 million in state and local taxes. So we really saw the state financial aid portion of the bill to be crucial, especially knowing that a lot of undocumented families come from low income and can't really see 1 or 2 children in school at the same time.
Even at the in-state rates, because they're still very high.
Right, especially for a struggling family growing up in a concentration of poverty. Even for a student to find their way out of that community or to see themselves going to school is a challenge all on its own. Imagine a student who is the first to go to school, who is the one translating for the parents, who is the one filling out the forms, seeing a price tag of $27,000 per year. That makes it completely unrealistic for a family such as my own to see me off to school, even outstanding students graduating top of their class. I graduated top 15 of my class and I couldn't even get the NJ Stars to the NJ Stars program. And that's a program where the money that I would have gotten didn't go to the next person because it was only given to the top 15. It just stayed there. So we saw that the in-state tuition and state financial aid was the best option for New Jersey, but unfortunately the governor line vetoed that portion of the bill, and then we only have in-state tuition.
So we have in-state tuition now in New Jersey. We do not have access to state financial aid. We still need to get that.
Definitely.
And the student coalitions are still at work, I think. Isn't that right?
Yes. The Assembly just introduced the state financial aid portion of the bill this month, and we are really hoping to get the support from all the legislators because it is an investment in New Jersey. Like you mentioned, I have deferred action for childhood arrivals, which allows me and many other students here in New Jersey to work. And what better investment to have an educated workforce than to just have high school educated
you have a status now. You're not fully undocumented. You know, it's a temporary program. What happens at the end, we don't know yet. But the deferred action program is very important for thousands of students. Let's talk for a little bit about working conditions for immigrants here in New Jersey. How easy is it to get work? What kind of jobs do immigrants have? And what kind of working conditions are there? Are there safe and proper workplaces, or do we have problems?
We have problems.
Tell me about them.
I knew some of them when I was undocumented, but especially working within the Spirit, we have been seeing that thousands of workers are not being given the proper conditions. And they vary from not being paid properly, of having actually their salary stolen. You get the end of the week and you don't get paid.
By the boss.
By the employer. And also that's the population that suffers disproportionately regarding safe and health conditions, working conditions. So in the Spirit, about a decade ago, signed an alliance with the federal government, with OSHA, in order to bring training to this population. So we have really witnessed a lot of discrimination on the wage and on the working conditions, accidents, lack of training, lack of protective equipment, everything you can think about.
Is the agreement with OSHA working out? Is it successful in uncovering problems and solving them?
It's very successful. As a matter of fact, we have been recognized by the then Secretary of Labor, Hilda Solis, as the most effective alliance in the country. And with this alliance, we have trained thousands and thousands of workers, which start knowing about their rights, get to know an agency of the government. Keep in mind that as immigrants and as undocumented immigrants, the government doesn't seem to be our friend. So this is an opportunity to see and have immigrants know that at least one portion of the government, which is the IRS, you already mentioned, doesn't discriminate. The Department of Labor doesn't either.
Well, IRS wants the money.
Right. And the Department of Labor wants to make sure that every worker is seen as having the same rights independently of any condition, inclusive of including the immigration status.
Mm-hmm. Are those working conditions any better or worse in one part of New Jersey compared to another part, in one industry compared to others, for women compared to men? Are there any kind of general conclusions that you can draw about the working conditions and how maybe we can work to get them better?
Definitely agriculture is terrible. So if we go for the southern part of the state, which we don't work that much with, we are more in the north of the state, but we know from other organizations working the south that as migrant workers traveling, you know, so you have all kinds of other problems with where they stay, how they live, how access to education for the children that come with these families. So agriculture is it was bad in California when Chavez was organizing.
Mm-hmm.
It's still bad in New Jersey today. As far as construction, which is what we see more in the north,
Got a lot, yeah.
is really bad. Lack of training, and again, salaries being not paid, and whatnot. And in the general industry, it's also really bad. If we go into factories, if we go into warehouses, we're going to see what we call sweatshops, and the big majority are immigrants, and a big chunk of immigrants right now happen to be Latinos from Central and South America.
Mm-hmm. Has Wind in the Spirit tried to work out agreements with law enforcement, with police departments, or with, I'm not talking about the immigration enforcement as much as I am about just local police and things like that? Or do you have any stories about members of Wind in the Spirit whom you've worked with who get into issues with law enforcement?
We've certainly had cases of folks being discriminated and even being police officers using their authority to kind of place a person into deportation proceedings.
Mm-hmm.
But besides, we in Morristown, we try to keep in contact with the police director and, you know, just basically watching out for our community members, seeing that our community members are treated with dignity and that we can in fact have a community where people feel safe reporting crime and whatnot.
Or domestic violence or whatever it might be. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, on that issue, we have had several instances where the police would come to our office to interview if it was a case of domestic abuse, interview the women in our office.
Okay.
So instead of interviewing them at the police headquarters, which would be a little more threatening, they would come to our office to do that. And we have done some alliances with some police departments where we showed them how we would get an ID for our members. And what kind of documents we would use to do that.
Right.
We use a passport, and we check their residency based on bills or whatever. And with that criteria, some police departments would accept IRD as a form of ID. So there is some attempt to have a relationship with the police.
Yeah, that's good. I know that happens in a number of towns around the state of New Jersey.
Right.
Yeah. How can citizens in New Jersey who are concerned about the treatment of immigrants get involved and be effective to help address these problems that you've been describing? What can people watching this show do to help out?
I personally feel that a lot of the tension between people that don't feel that undocumented immigrants shouldn't even be given an opportunity is the lack of knowledge and the lack of understanding of where our issues are coming from and why it is in both of our interests to work together to see a solution for our immigration problem. And So like one of the thing that I mentioned about the IRS paying taxes and seeing our communities feel safe and secure and having a good relationship with law enforcement, that's a priority to us, because what happens a lot is that folks that are on the far end of the opposition sometimes may even take away our dignity, and
Sure.
and
Oh,
I've
yeah.
certainly felt that, not just from comments on newspapers, but also on the television screen sometimes, where it can even deter someone from even watching television because you feel like your whole being is being attacked. So one of the things would be also to support legislature that would help our immigrant families, like anti-detention policies, also our state financial aid campaign as well.
Right.
Or even maybe just if they really want to know what a come in with an open heart and an open mind to Win in the Spirit. And we can certainly see there's always work to be done in the immigrant community, because like we mentioned, we do a lot of work with youth, we do a lot of work with labor. It's just, it takes someone to come in with an open heart and open mind. And
Well, what you're saying, Anna, sounds excellent to me. I think for the rest of us who have been blessed with American citizenship from the start, or who were able to become citizens through a more natural way, we just don't know so often what the conditions are and what the stories are and what the situations are that today's migrants are facing in New
Right.
Jersey. And it's very important to get educated, to learn more about what the situation is for so many of these people.
to be an advocate and to correct someone when they say something that's wrong, like undocumented students shouldn't get state aid or in-state tuition or scholarships.
Or not be concerned about labor conditions and
Right.
things like that. Yeah.
Because as Martin Luther King Jr. said, justice delayed is justice denied. And we certainly want to progress. We certainly want to grow with America. And by not allowing for our immigrant community to flourish here, then we're not progressing as a society. We're not progressing as a country.
Thank you. These are complicated issues. And Stuart Sydenstricker and Anna Bonilla, thank you for giving us just a little introduction to some of these issues. It's important that we continue to learn about them and try to be as compassionate and as fair as we can for all of our fellow people in New Jersey. These programs are a service of the Unitarian Universalist Legislative Ministry of New Jersey, a nonprofit faith-based organization supported by UU congregations throughout the state. For more information, please go to www.uulmnj.org. Thank you to Win to the Spirit, to you, Stuart, and to you, Anna.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for watching.